afoot in the field of alcohol, we shall be sorely tempted to loan out the name and credit of Alcoholics Anonymous to them. As a movement, we shall be set to finance and endorse other causes. Should our present success continue, people will commence to assert that AA is a brand new way of life, maybe a new religion capable of saving the world. We shall be told it is our bounden duty to show modern society how it ought to live. Boy, we're not too conceited there, are we? All right, you can see even in Tradition 5, he's tilling the soil for the upcoming traditions. He goes on to say, oh, how very attractive these projects and ideas can be. How flattering to imagine that we might be chosen to demonstrate that old mystic promise. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. For some, that is in that good book or the big book, that is a quote out of the Bible. The New Testament, for what it's worth. That's just history. It's not an outside issue. Just explain where it came from. Fantastic, you say. Yet some of our will-wishers have begun to say such things. Fortunately, most of us are convinced that these perilous speculations, alluring ingredients of that new heady wine are now being offered. Each bottle marks success. What is alluring? Very attractive, tempting, enticing, seductive, fascinating, and charming. What is perilous? Involving or full of grave risk or peril, hazardous or dangerous. Oh, that's right. He did say life or death. I get it. So now he's explaining that to us. Okay. And yes, what we talked about, success is our biggest problem in Alcoholics Anonymous. Thinking that we have the answer for alcoholism and now we can cure the world of everything else too. Says absolutely, positively not so. He goes on to say, this subtle vintage may we drink too deeply, may we never forget that we live by the grace of God on borrowed time, that anonymity is better than acclaim, that for us as a movement, poverty is better than wealth. Oh, I think he's getting down to these two ideas. Humility and sacrifice. Okay? What he's saying for all of us is there's a size of slippers in detox or a bathrobe that fits any length of sobriety or recovery, if you will. And that's for us as a society as a whole. He goes on to say, and may we reflect with ever-deepening conviction that we shall never be at our best except when we hew only to the primary spiritual aim of AA. Wow, now listen to what he just said, y'all. Primary spiritual aim, that takes out all arguments of what the primary single purpose, all the definitions. Who's going to argue with God? Well, probably all of us, right? Okay. Anyhow, primary spiritual aim of AA. That of carrying its message to the alcoholic, not alcoholic who still suffers alcoholism. Once again, obviously, what is his message? Obviously, Step 12, that's the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we find out that this, Tradition 5, good can be the deadly enemy of the best, and nothing but our very best will ever be good enough for Alcoholics Anonymous, which leads to primary purpose, singleness purpose, 1. It's so explained there, 1948. Been there, done that. So in the year 2017, there's no debate. It's already been established. Okay, let's see what he goes on to say on page 93. Obviously, one more food for thought with this tradition. Two words, sacred trust. That's pretty powerful. Okay, let's see what he says on 93. And that's where, God bless you, whoever that is. I'm sure you need blessed too. That's page 93, about the second paragraph where it says Tradition 5. Tradition 5, page 93, where it says, he uses a big R word. Tradition 5 restricts the AA group, to what? What is it restricted to? To a single one. That's right, it is baseball playoffs. So when you get a single, how many bases do you go to? One. Yes, that's right. First base. Okay, that's right. That is correct. Single, one, get it. In the same. Okay, so now it says, obviously, to a single purpose, carrying our message. Wow, not my message, not a message, not some message, our message. What is our message? Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these 12 steps, etc., etc., etc. I know it sounds too simple, but that's what it is. That's what it is, black and white, okay? And carry our message to other alcoholics, period. And if you haven't been with us, the English language, when there's a period, that means done. You are done with that thought. There's not a comma. It's not a hyphen. It's not a semicolon. Done to other alcoholics, period. Okay. Next page, 26. What is a spiritual entity? And I love when people say, I want to have a business meeting in the home group. Well, I suppose you can, but you ain't a spiritual entity if you're having a business meeting. Let's see what it says here on page 26. Is that what it is? My bad. Spiritual entities and what it says here. Spiritual entities. Okay. It says this. Second paragraph. More and more. Second paragraph, page 26. More and more, the AA groups, God almighty, can't get away from it. I'm trying to drum up some literature there, sales there, okay. More and more, the AA groups are realizing that they are spiritual entities, not business organizations, period. So what is a spiritual entity? I'm glad that you asked that. Just like I thought I knew what purpose was, wrong. Thought I knew what primary was, wrong. Let's see what a spiritual entity is. And much to my surprise, I was wrong about that too. Spiritual entity. Spiritual is this: relating to or consisting of the spirit, incorporeal, not corporeal or material, relating to or characteristic of non-material beings. That's everybody and everything right here. It is not. It is not a business meeting. It is a spiritual entity. What is an entity? Something that has real existence. It's distinct, independent, self-contained, essential nature. Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual entity. Therefore, all of the groups, oh, I get it. So that's how, if groups are spiritual entity, then that assures tradition too. A loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. See how, what I said before? 1 through 4 assure 5. 5 ensures 1 through 4. It's that thing that goes, the arrow that goes both ways. Spiritual entity. Is that what our groups are spiritual entities? So, let's see what he says on page 223. Okay, about a soul purpose. Page 223. And that would be the middle of the page. Soul, and that's not like soul not on your heel, but soul not in your soul either. See, isn't that English language a funny thing? We got a bunch of different men. Soul, S-O-L-E, is one. Oh, I get it. Single. Oh, I get it. Primary. Oh, they're all meaning the same. I got it. Okay, so that would be paragraph number 2 on page 223. Sobriety, freedom from alcohol, nothing else, by the way, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps is the sole purpose of an AA group. Sorry, here we are again. Now I'm really getting it. Okay. Groups have repeatedly tried other activities, and they have always failed. Not sometimes, not most of the time, not a lot of times, not most of the time, always failed. What we're talking about is when AA groups try to get into other addictions, other causes, other political things, rights, and so on and so forth. They've tried it all, and they no longer exist because they got diverted from their primary purpose and they fell apart. That's our history. That's experience. It happened. It's undebatable. It's not a philosophy. It's not a thought. It's not an idea. It's history. What did he just get done saying? They have always failed. This was written back in 1958. So if they were failing back then from 39 to 58, guess what? They're still failing today. And that's why, how many groups drop out a year? How many groups close up in a year? A lot. How about a lot? We'll just say that. When groups no longer exist, they have one thing in common. One of the 41 spiritual principles we have been violated or continued. And before you do your quick math with your smartphone, it's 12 steps, 12 traditions, 12 concepts is 36, but you have warranties of the concept, okay? Those are the spiritual principles that are violated, and a group cannot and will not exist. And it certainly will not be an AA group if it continues. It could be a group of AAs doing whatever the heck they want and so on and so forth, but it will not be an AA group, and it will not be carrying our message, what it says, okay? So it goes on to say, it also has been learned there is no possible way of making non-alcoholics into AA members. We have to confine our membership to alcoholics. We have to confine our AA groups to a single purpose. If we don't stick to these principles, then we shall almost surely collapse. And if we collapse, we cannot help anyone. Once again, we went at great lengths, and obviously there's tradition 3 in there, and there's tradition 1, but it all comes back to tradition 5, or 1 and 3 comes to 5, however you're looking at it. Whatever new math you're using, but it's this. Unity, primary purpose, responsibility, the 3 pertinent ideas. Absolutely fascinating. So he goes on to say that, and then the rest of that is we talked about as far as what the groups can and can't do and so on and so forth, and that's problems other than alcohol. Our handy-dandy thing, we talked about that before, but it's worth mentioning, and there is the full talk of problems other than alcohol in this book. Okay. Now, approaching maturity, page 115 to 116. I laughed when I read that. The reason that I say that in 115, 116, you know a bill called Alcoholics Anonymous? Spiritual kindergarten. He says AA grows to maturity. Guess what? You ain't never going to get there, right? We're spiritual infants, not so high and mighty. And I love this. AA grows to spiritual maturity. Look when he wrote this, October 1949. It says we didn't achieve it, we approached it. Let's go on to what he says. Alcoholics Anonymous is 14 years old, yet no one thinks we are entering adolescence. On the contrary, we're approaching maturity. Therefore, our problems, plural, not problem, plural, problems, and our responsibilities, that also is plural, that's more than just one, responsibilities. I thought I could just be sober and it's all about me and I wouldn't have to do nothing, no obligations, no responsibility, no sacred trust that we were talking about, all that. Absolutely, positively not. As a society are on the increase, not decrease, increase. It is becoming clear we cannot be forever immune from the fearful pressures that are tearing modern society apart. Like other societies of men and women, we shall no doubt be tempted to enter upon serious controversies. Obviously, he's going to give us 9 examples in what I'm saying about these traditions. He's tilling the ground for tradition 10 with this, because if we don't abide to tradition 5, we will get into 10, what the Washingtonians did, and they dissolved, and here's what he's going to say. And it's so cool how he does that. He goes on to say this: serious controversies. Perhaps some of us will seek fame and fortune at the expense of Alcoholics Anonymous. Shall be tempted to attack those who attack us. Oh, really? Okay. We shall yearn for alliances with powerful friends. We shall wish to write laws and so enter politics. It will be difficult to remain neutral in science versus religion conflict. Some might wish to see Alcoholics Anonymous divided into sectarian lines. And as we become better known, we shall certainly be offered large grants of destruction in the form of money. We might forget our resolve to stay poor. These may well be the crucial problems of our maturity. Even now, one sees their outlines. God, did he have a gift for seeing the future or what? And obviously with the alcoholic ego. So in 1949, the big book, the print was still drying on it, was only 10 years old. And look how far he was ahead. He already saw what was happening because we were doing it to ourselves. And he knew that we needed these traditions. He goes on to say, yes, I am deeply, yes, fervently convinced that Alcoholics Anonymous will weather all adversities and even the test of time for so long as God shall need us. Uh-oh. Oh, that's right. So my sobriety ain't mine. Yours ain't yours. It's God's. He's going to keep us around as long as he says so. But guess what? If there's going to be any work that's going to be done down here, we got to do it, right? As long as he says so. That really takes this thing. Oh, I get it. This damn word here. Humility. Cut down to the right size with myself. Cut down the right size with my fellow man, and most importantly, cut down the right size with Almighty God. That's right, that's what these traditions do. They bring us ego deflation at depth, just like the 12 steps do. Remember, it's 12 steps and the 12 traditions for recovery. Powerful, powerful, powerful. Okay. And it says, my faith in our future rests upon certain facts of our experience. Oh. So once again, experience are facts. We've established what that is. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. Not to be debated. It is what it is. He says facts of our experience. So here's what he's going to say. He's going to take it next. First, I suppose that's number 1 when he says first. Okay, that would be true. First, we now humbly, gaze upon 80,000 miracles of personal recovery. He didn't say not drinking, putting the plug in the jug. We're talking recovery. There may have been some sobriety out there that he saw. We see that each of us, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, has been able by God's grace to achieve the impossible. Don't you just love him? He's give the credit where the credit's due. He always worshiped the Creator, not the creation. Always worship the giver and not the gifts. Look for the blesser, not the blessing. Back to back to back. Humility. Just love the way he does it. Okay? In each, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few. In each life, damn him. Tradition 1. Unity has risen far above former chaos. Yeah, that's what he used to call us too, by the way, was children of chaos. I don't know how he knew that, but yeah, that was his nickname for us. This being God's grant to us personally, we may, if we are worthy, surely expect equal unity for A as a whole. If I'm not worthy, then guess what? We ain't going to have equal unity. That comes to a scary thing too, and obviously, humility, sacrifice, worthy. And remember what he said, we'll be around as long as God deems it. So I suppose if he's given us this gift, this grace, and if it's important to us, we'll do everything to keep it in the condition that was given to us. Not take away from it, not add to it, keep it the way God has given it to us. We are stewards of Alcoholics Anonymous. for the ones to come. It was here for us when we got here, right? So that's about the same. So now it goes on to say, number 2, second. Okay, first is 1, number 2 is second. We are sure there must be 1 million alcoholics who would join Alcoholics tomorrow if they only knew what we do. We should be anonymous, but the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous should not be. We should be anonymous, the members, but the fellowship is not, okay? So what is it that we do? We put the plug in the jug and go to 90 meetings in 90 days, fake it till we make it, and all that stuff we hear about? Are we basing our success on the last time we took a drink? Are we basing our success on the quality of our recovery, having had the spiritual awakening, the life-changing, what he talks about in the big book, Silkworth said, recreating our life. Bill says in the narrative of the third step, we are reborn. I think we're losing what Alcoholics Anonymous is and isn't, okay? It's a lot more than not drinking and going to AA meetings. So he goes on to say that obviously we keenly realize that any fundamental disunity, he told us what our success is, unity. Now he tells us what the downfall is going to be. Fundamental disunity among us could instantly delusion tens of thousands who would again turn their faces to the wall. Sit on what he just said, when he said that. We are killing each other and alcoholics with our disunity. That's pretty powerful. I don't want the blood of anybody's life on my hands. And that is happening by the disunity that he talks about, okay? And it goes on to say, hence, those disruptions common to the great wealth, power, and controversy ought to never do for us. Too many of the million who don't know would surely die. Pretty powerful. Therefore, our fifth tradition declares, quote, each AA group ought to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. Okay, now he's going to wrap it up with this. So long as we remain grateful for what has befallen us, and for so long as this tradition of high and single purpose is indelibly emblazoned on our hearts, not in it, on our hearts, our destiny will be assured. So I suppose if we don't, then guess what? It's question mark, what is going to happen to Alcoholics Anonymous? That's a lot of power there. I'm going to go ahead and read that again. That's how important this tradition is. Remember, he said life or death. He's going to say it again in no uncertain terms. It goes on. So long as we remain grateful for what has befallen us and for our so long as this tradition of high and single purpose is indelibly emblazoned on our hearts, our destiny will be assured. We shall be worthy of God's providence. This is what he said. He said, on our hearts, not in our heads, not in our lips, in our hearts. Because if it's in your heart, then it's going to be in your head. It's going to be in your lips. It's going to be in the way we treat each other. It's going to be what we do. And if we don't have it, obviously, our destiny will not be assured. That's a high sacred trust and a big responsibility, big obligation that we've talked about. And he says if we have it, we shall be worthy of God's providence. If not, then obviously we're not. Worthy, he mentions twice, by the way, in this little short article. Are we worthy? I don't know. You answer that to yourself. And obviously, I like about this, he's talking about grateful, and now he's taken this to a high, meaning not what you do when you smoke reefer. Come on, y'all. High means number one. Remember priority, primary? Just using different words, but it's powerful. It's a matter of life and death. Shall we be worthy of that? Okay, carrying the message, page 160. So now, the group, like I said, carrying the message, what is that we are carrying? Obviously, page 160 at the bottom. Our 12th step, carrying the message, is the basic service that the AA Fellowship gives. That is the principal aim and the main reason for our existence. That's who, what we are, what we do, and what we else don't do. And if you're not in the thing from January till May, we'll tell you chapter 7 tells us exactly how to do that. Specifically, he tells us 86 things that we do. And he tells us specifically 29 we don't. We do not do this, we do this. So I better have a concept and a grasp. Remember what I told you in the beginning? I can't talk about singleness and primary purpose until I know what the purpose in the big book is. Same thing with this message, carrying this message, working with others. I can't have that in a message if I don't know the 86 and the 29. If not, then I'm infecting the message, I'm not carrying it. And if that's going to be the case, then guess what? Your group's going to be infected in the message and not carrying it. We'll be carrying the disease and not the recovery. So I've got to have both. Remember, 12 steps, 12 traditions together complement. So he goes on to say, therefore, AA is more than a set of principles. It's a society of alcoholics in action. Not talking, not reading, not philosophizing, not theory, yada, yada. It's into action. Oh, that's right. There's a chapter in that too. Now listen what he says. We must, not should, not could, not ought to, carry the message, else ourselves can wither, and those who haven't been given the truth will die. It's pretty simple. Oh, that's right. We've established it again and again and again on this tradition. It's life or death, life and death. I really am starting to see how important this tradition is, not only individually, but for all of us. Okay, hence an AA service is anything, whatever, that helps us to reach a fellow sufferer, ranging all the way from the 12th step itself, the 10-cent phone call, a cup of coffee, to AA's general service, headquarters, and national and international action. The sum total of all of these services is our third legacy. And then obviously this next one goes on with Tradition 9, talking about the service, including meeting clubs, hospitals, intergroup. We will get through that. Second paragraph on page 161. It says, these services, whether performed by individual groups or areas or AA as a whole, are utterly vital, that means life and death again, to our existence and growth. Obviously, it's important that we know about the growth. Nor can we make AA simply by abolishing such services. We'd only asking for complication and confusion. So then he goes on to talk about the vital services, and that's in Tradition 9, and we will get to that. That part of this article when we go to Tradition 9. Okay, responsibility, page 328. 328. Responsibility is our theme. Skip that first sentence. It's just giving us with a history. It was 65 at the International Convention of Toronto. And it says, the keynote will be AA's responsibility. Isn't that absolutely fascinating? The responsibility is in our fifth tradition. Oh, so is our primary purpose. I thought it was all about that, but absolutely not. And those two will ensure our first tradition. United we stand, divided we fall. Oh, that's what this is about the fifth tradition. Okay. It goes on to say, stirred by gratitude beyond expression, we shall give thanks to God's grace, which made it possible for us to achieve the quality, responsibility, individual and collective, that has brought our fellowship into its present state of well-being and worldwide reach. Is that what we have in 2017? Do we have a present state of well-being and worldwide reach? Okay. Looking back through the years, we shall be unable to conceive that more than a mere fraction of what God has wrought among us. Once again, damn him, back to humility. Always goes back to God and always goes back to the newcomer. Those are Bill's reoccurring themes with all of these traditions. Oh, that's right. Humility, cut down the right size, and Russ and I were talking about earlier. All of these traditions, you got to give up something. You got to surrender to win. We talked about it earlier. Got to die in order to live, surrender to win, suffer to get well, and of course give it away to keep it. Okay? He goes on to say, none will be able to imagine the sum of suffering that was once ours, nor the misery borne by the near and dear. Who will really understand the inner nature of the transforming spiritual experiences, we talked about that, those gifts of God that open us to a new world of being and a new and doing and living. Indeed, our blessings have been quite beyond any human comprehension. That is Alcoholics Anonymous. Beautiful description. Responsibility is our theme. Skip the next sentence or so. It says, we shall see that the sun never sets upon AA's fellowship, that 350 of us now have recovered, not recovering, from our malady. Better know what's in that textbook called Alcoholics Anonymous, because I don't know if I'm recovering, or I'm putting the plug in the jug and what the malady is. We have begin to transcend those formidable barriers of race, creed, and nationality. This assurance that so many of us has been able to meet our responsibilities for sobriety and for growth and effectiveness. Oh, that's right. Step 10, what does he say? We'll grow in understanding of effectiveness. Once again, I cannot have this unless I have that other textbook called Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay? In the troubled world by which we live, we surely can fill with the deepest joy and satisfaction, but as people have nearly always learned the hard way, we shall certainly not congratulate ourselves. Oh, don't want to pat ourselves on our back, I see. We shall perceive these assets to be of God's gifts, which have been in part matched by an increasing willingness on our part to find and do His will for us. I get it. So I have to do the possible, and God will do the impossible. If I want a helping hand, I've got them on the end of my arms. Most of us haven't lost them. Most of them, they still work. So that means, Mose Yoder used to say, if you want potatoes, grab a hoe. I said that at a talk one time. Somebody says, I can't believe you're swearing up there. No, not that kind of hoe. It's a garden instrument. Go Google it or go get yeah. So anyhow, yeah, faith to move a mountain, but you better bring a sponsor, a home group, and a shovel. If anything's going to be done down here, we got to do it. And God expects us to do that. Okay, so it goes on to say, then we shall remember, too, how the pains of our illness literally drove us to what most of us thought was the first responsible act of years. Here's what it is, that of joining AA. So you can tell somebody, I'm responsible, I joined AA. Alcoholism had literally lashed us to such a point of collapse that we became willing to do whatever was necessary to get well. He didn't say to quit drinking, that's recovery. To get well. It was a matter, God darn him, I was going to say, it was a matter of life and death. Both those are literal and figuratively. Not only will I physically die after I drink, but I'll die long before I physically die, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's a slow, agonizing torture before I take that first drink. And just like life, it's not a matter of just waking up every day. We're talking about living. And that's what the book, that's all what Alcoholics Anonymous in this recovery thing is. So it's relative and it's subjective, and it's, like I said, there's a whole lot of different things on a lot of different terms for that. It says, thus propelled, we finally did join the A fellowship, and there had been our first glimpse of quite a new world of understanding and loving concern. Is that what we have here? So we look at AA 12 steps for recovery, not drinking, but many of us promptly forgot 10 of them as perhaps not needed. Oh, so wait a minute. Some of us are working the 2-step program. I got it what it is. The first half of the second step, my life's a mess. In the first part of, in the first part of step 12, my life's a mess, and I want to share it with you. Okay, that's what it is. Yeah, that's the 2-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Don't kid yourself. It's the kind of crap that's going around Alcoholics Anonymous. Therefore, it is not what we're talking about and far from everything that he's talking about. Now, how did he know that? Back in 1965, okay? And it says, we bought only the concept that we're alcoholics, that attendance at AA meetings and helping hand to newcomers would be sufficient to solve the booze problem and probably other problems. Skip down to the next paragraph where it says, so each of us looked. Okay. Obviously, he talks about sobriety or untreated alcoholism, and he tells us how to get into it or get out of it, I guess. I love this next description. So each of us looked up his sponsor and regaled him with these woes. Our resentments, anxieties, and depressions were definitely caused, we claim, by our unfortunate circumstances and by those inconsiderate behavior of other people. Oh, man. That's what you call dry drunk there. Blame people, places, and things. Always bitching, complaining, fault finding, finger pointing. And by the way, if I spot it, I got it. What I hate most about you is what I hate about myself the most. So yeah, that's the way that is. So sorry. Oh, that's right. That's what the whole inventory process is in step 4. You continue it in 10, and you do it again in 11. So if you're doing the deal on here, this won't be an issue, but we all fall back into the old ways, don't we? Anyhow, it goes on like this. And it says, to our consternation, our sponsors didn't seem impressed either. Oh, you don't understand. Okay. They had just grinned and said, why don't we sit down and take a hard look at all of AA's 12 steps? Not some of them, not most of them, not a lot of them, not quite a few, all of them. Maybe you have been missing a lot. In fact, nearly everything. Isn't that beautiful or what? So yeah, I like that. So yeah, okay. And of course, we ask each other, did you pray about it? Then we begin to take our own inventories rather than the other fellows. Getting in the swing of self-examination, we finally began to discover our real responsibilities. See, he ain't going to let you off the hook. There's method of the madness towards ourselves and towards those around us. Though a tough assignment, it did by degrees get easier. We began to make restitution to those we had harmed, grudgingly at first and then more willingly. Little by little, we found that all, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, all progress, material or spiritual, consisted of finding out, oh my God, get a barf bag, what our responsibilities actually were, then proceeding to do something about them. So now, wait a minute. It's bad enough I got to learn what they are, and that means I got to do them? Oh, man, you didn't tell me that. Okay, now it says, do something about them. The activities began to pay off. We found that we didn't always have to be driven by our own discomforts, as more willingly we picked up the burdens of living and growing. 12 steps, 12 traditions, recovery. We talked about it earlier. Whenever you use the word recovery, you can use the equal sign for God. And when I say it's all good, drop one letter, it's all God. Came into Alcoholics Anonymous in 1987. The old timers, one of the pack of dogs said, I got some good news and bad news. And I didn't have any good news that year of 1987, let me tell you. I said, all right, I want the good news first. And he says, okay. AA's all about God. And I said, oh, well, I won't tell you what I said. I said, all right, what's the bad news? He said, AA's all about God, okay, which equals responsibility and or recovery. So it goes on to say, obviously, it began to pay off. We found that we didn't always have to be driven by our discomforts. Okay, then most surprising, we discovered that full, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, acceptance and action. Can't have one without the other to get the goods. Upon any clear-cut, oh my God, responsibility, almost invariably made true happiness and peace of mind. So if you are restless, irritable, discontent, full of fear, guilt, shame, and remorse, living a life of terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair, aka sobriety, untreated alcoholism, I think this may give us a formula. The 12 steps and the 12 traditions, and damn him, that R word, responsibility. And what is our responsibility? It's the 5th tradition. This is what we're going. One of our many responsibilities, plural. Okay, now it goes on to say, okay, almost invariably made for true happiness and peace of mind. True. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Moreover, these durable satisfactions were redoubled when we realized that our now better quality of willingness made it possible in meditation to find God's will. Oh, so that means I sought through prayer and meditation to improve. Oh, through prayer and meditation. Oh, okay. Praying only. Oh, okay. So that's the way for true happiness, okay, and peace of mind. Okay, then it goes on to say, at last we discovered we could joyfully, oh God, wanted to live responsibly. That's about enough to make me, all right. So anyhow, he goes on to say, such has been the course of spiritual unfoldment in AA, our pilgrim's progress, if you like. As it has been with each, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, each AA member, so it has been with each AA group and AA as a whole. Come on, y'all, remember when he started the beginning? Relations, the 3 levels of relations. He just got done saying it again. 12 steps and 12 traditions, in particular with our study tonight in the 5th tradition. Okay, now it goes on to say, I have often seen our society timid, fearful, angry, and prideful, apathetic, and indifferent. Uh-oh. That must be a business meeting and not a meeting of a spiritual entity, okay? I have seen these negatives fade as the lessons, the big word, of experience were learned and gladly applied. Let's recall a few instances. We are going to go through this in short order as time is a premium. Let us recall a few incidences. In the early days, we were so timid that we were sure AA should be a secret society. A lot of them want to do that today. Take AA underground. I think that other book says something about don't put your candle under a bushel basket. If it's a secret society in the basement, how is the new man or woman going to find us in a basement? Good question. I guess invite only, huh? So we're going to invite them in after they die or before? How's that going to work? Remember, we should be anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous should not. So you can skip the next couple sentences. It says, we have often been angered at criticism from within and from our outside world. We've generally been far better at dishing out criticism than taking it. Oh, really? Okay. Sometimes we have boasted of AA to the know-all and do-all of alcoholism, so alienating our friends. Oh, so that's what we're talking about as a fellowship. That other book that we keep talking about, the big book, says we don't have a monopoly on God, thank God. That's a joke, huh? My God's bigger than your God. It'll beat your God up. I think that's what we talk about. So anyhow, I'll skip the next couple sentences. By poor sponsorship. Uh-oh. We have sometimes failed the needs of newly arrived sufferers. Uh-oh. Oh, that's right. Sponsorship would be part of this thing too. Responsibility. Okay, now, it goes on to say, then at a certain turning point of our history, then at certain great turning points, plural, of our history, we have been in anger, sheer indifference, backed away from what should have been clearly viable, responsibilities. Disastrous results were on few occasions barely averted. Old-timers can recall that the book Alcoholics Anonymous may never have been printed because some avowed that we did not need it. shrank at the risk of preparing that invaluable text. There was a great outcry against the formation of the General Service Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous, that indispensable body of delegates which links our society with AA's trustees and world services. Skip the next sentence where it says, this utterly vital life and death, how many times we heard that tonight, undertaking nearly fell by the wayside from a sheer burden of indifference, heavy attack, and little faith. Yet in God's time, not ours, our spiritual assets have invariably come to exceed even such large liabilities. Oh, so once again, God is the answer. 12 steps, 12 traditions, equal recovery, /God, a.k.a. AA recovery goes forward on large scale. Practice of AA's 12 traditions have amazingly cemented our unity. Tradition 1, but we're with tradition 5. Skip the next one where it says, our pains of our necessities first called us reluctantly to responsibility. But in the latter years, a joyful willingness and a confident faith have more and more permeated all the affairs of our fellowship. Despite this happy transcendence, that's victory by the way, of difficulties of yesterday and of today, we'll nevertheless deeply realize that our negative traits are still with us and always will be. He's talking about not only the individual, but the fellowship. Remember what he said, AA is a communion of sinners, not of saints. We are brothers in our defects, not in our virtues. That's why we're all here, because we ain't all there. And it goes on to say, therefore, our constant, oh my God, if he uses this word one more time, responsibility should be that of taking fearless inventory of our defects as we go, the better to undertake the mending. We shall therefore ask ourselves, what sort of heritage are we leaving for the use of all those future generations that will people our society? Is this heritage as good as we can make it? While there is yet time, what we can still do may multiply our assets and decrease our liabilities. Pretty powerful, and obviously he's telling us as a fellowship to continue our step 4, continue and improve, obviously the inventory steps as a whole. Skip the next sentence where it says, if I inventory A shortcomings, be assured that I'm also taking stock of my own. So if there's something in AA going on, then chances are it's going on in me. I know that my errors of yesterday still have their effects, and that my shortcomings of today may likewise affect our future. So it is with each and all of us. Not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few. Now he's really putting it on, that damn R word, responsibility. Therefore, let us together take a look at more important areas in the life of our fellowship where the call for improvement will always be insistent. Okay, now, did you notice he said errors of yesterday still have their effect? Shortcomings of today affect the future. Anybody catch on there? He used the word affect and the word effect. Go to your dictionary and see what the difference is. Master of the English language. I need to know what the affect versus the effect is. He's putting it on me and you individually and collectively. 5th tradition. So he goes on to say, our first concern should be the sufferers that will still be unable to reach. Remember, he's always talking about God and the new people. Let us first humbly, realize that throughout the world today there are 20 million alcoholics, 5 million of them being in the United States alone. Of course, these vast numbers are in all stages of sickness. Sometimes some cannot be reached because they are not hurt enough, or others because they are hurt too much. Many sufferers have mental and emotional complications that seem to foreclose their chances. Yet, it would be conservative to estimate that at any particular time where there are 4 million alcoholics in the world who are able, ready, and willing to get well if only they knew how. Oh, and the only way they're going to know how is by our groups having one primary purpose, to carry its message to the still suffering alcoholic. See how he's tying it all up? That's the only way this thing is going to continue, much less grow. And by the way, if you're into numbers, and almost done, Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship, is in business terms, is in a recession. It might even be in a depression. We are going backwards in the number of members. We are going backwards in the number of groups. Does that mean there's less alcoholics in the world? Why? You answer it to yourself, but in the business world, and it's alarming. It's very alarming, too, now that treatment has gone back. Do you know that the number of big books that are sold now that the treatments in the hospitals and all that aren't buying them? We're in trouble. Why do you think the big books keep going up now, right? Because they got to make up for that deficit. Because New York, if we didn't have the literature, I'm going to say it, they'd be flat-ass broke, just like probably our office is up there. If the office in this it's across the country, it's across the world. We're not even supporting our own stuff with our own donations. We're getting it through fundraising and through literature. Better be careful, because once approved and reserved, the things that we have, we could lose them, and you may never get them back. And sorry about the editorial, but those are the facts and those are the numbers. I suggest we all be aware of that. To me, personally, that is very alarming. It's been a trend, and it is a trend, and it isn't going away. Individually and collectively, I believe we should be aware of it. Individually and collectively, I believe we should address that. That's my personal input for the day. You notice I didn't use that word opinion. So how did I bleed off onto that? Okay, yes, all right, where we're at. Okay. Now, and it says, clearly, all those sufferers need to know what alcoholism is. Big book. And recognize that they are so afflicted. Being thus ready, they will be brought in within our reach by every resource of public information, word of mouth, that will tell them exactly, not close, not sort of, not kind of, not in a general way, what steps they can take in finding the road to recovery. It didn't say of, it said to. Exact word in the right place. The road to recovery, okay? When we remember that in 30 years age existence, we've reached less than 10% of those who might be willing to approach us, we begin to get an idea of the immensity of our task, of the, responsibilities with which we will always be confronted. So, you know what? We've got an obligation. We've got responsibility. We got that sacred trust until we take the final test, and that's taking our last sober breath. Never, ever going to be done. Obligation, responsibility, that's what God's given us. That's what we need to do. How do we do it? Tradition 5. So he goes on to say, these facts, remember the 12 traditions are facts, a set of truths, point straight to our next responsibility, that of intelligently and lovingly sponsoring each man and woman who comes among us asking help. It didn't say to be a militant or a police or run their lives. It said comes along lovingly, intelligently sponsoring, asking for help. The care and concern with which we individually and collectively do this can make all the difference. Besides the greatest expression of gratitude that we can give for what we have for ourselves has been received, without much doubt, 1 million alcoholics have approached AA in the last 30 years. We can soberly ask ourselves what became of the 600,000 that did not stay. How much and how often did we fail all of these? Could be that we're not carrying, remember the theme of this, the message, our message, okay? And it's more than the 12 steps. It's the 12 traditions that we're talking about that produces recovery, total, complete, emotional sobriety, mental, emotional, spiritual, the real deal, Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's not. Yes, don't drink and go to meetings. Everything's going to be okay, right? Okay, and it says, in no circumstances should we feel Alcoholics Anonymous the know all and be all of alcoholism. The rest of that paragraph is it's statistics in U.S. and Canada of other agencies that are helping. Next, or the bottom of that paragraph, it says, too often I think. Page 232. Too often I think. I have deprecated and even derided these projects of our friends just because we not always see eye with them. We should very seriously ask ourselves how many alcoholics have gone on drinking simply because we failed to cooperate in good spirit with many agencies, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent. No alcoholic should go mad or die merely because he did not come straight to AA at the beginning. He's tilling the ground for the future traditions. Let's be friendly with our friends, but not endorse or oppose any causes. Because we've got one. Oh, God, that's right. That's right. We're on that one primary purpose. One. Yeah, I get it. So he's closing it up with that. So he goes on to say, let's look at the matter of criticism. Skip the next couple sentences. It says, so we register surprise, shock, and anger when people find fault with AA. We're apt to be disturbed to such an extent we cannot benefit by constructive criticism. Skip the next two sentences. It says, surely this sort of resentment makes no friends and achieves no constructive purpose. Another purpose, a constructive purpose. Construct means you're going to build something. Destruct means you're going to tear it down. Constructive purpose. Criticism, I get it, okay. Certainly this is an area which we can improve. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religion, nor is it medical treatment, nor to profess expertise in respect to unconscious motivations for behavior. These are facts all too often overlooked. Here and there, our members here proclaiming AA is a great new religion. So you can see, obviously, we've tried all that crap and it doesn't work. Page 333. Skip the first sentence. It talks about psychiatry. It says, again, we're forgetting that to religion and medical arts that we owe our very existence. That means without them, we would not be who and what we are. Got it. Got to give the credit where the credit's due. Different story for a different day, but he just acknowledged it right there. I suppose it brings us to humility, too, once again. And it says, its cardinal principles and attitudes, AA has made great use of all, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, all of these resources. It's chiefly our friends who first gave us the principles and attitudes that enable us to live and to move today. Isn't he humble? Thank God, Bill. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Therefore, the credit of all these vital, life and death, contributors stands aces high among us. Certainly we drunks did put AA together, but all, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, of its basic components were supplied by others. That's non-alcoholics, y'all. Okay, now he goes on to say, here especially our maxim should be, let's be friendly with our friends. Yes, once again, I jumped the gun, and he's going to go ahead and we're going to talk about that in weeks coming. Please come back. And a historical fact that practically all groupings of men and women tend to become more dogmatic. Their beliefs and practices hardened, sometimes frozen. What is dogma? It is not something that you walk and you pet and water. It is an official system of principles, tenets, morals, behavior. That's what dogma is. Okay, and he's going to talk about that. And it says, obviously, and it says, their beliefs, practices hardened, sometimes freeze. This is a natural, almost inevitable process. All people, not some, not most, not a lot, quite a few, damn him, people must, not should, not could, not ought to, of course, rally to the cause of their convictions, and we of AA are no exception. Moreover, all people should have the right to voice their convictions. This is a good principle and good dogma. But dogma has its liabilities. So we have a good dogma and a bad dogma, and he spanked the bad dogma with the newspaper. So anyhow, it goes on to say, simply because we have convictions that work well with us, it becomes very easy to assume that we all have the truth. Whenever this brand of arrogance develops, we are certain to become aggressive. We demand agreement with us. We play God. Oh, that's right. On page 62 of that other book, the big book, it says, this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. So I got to have that book to do this book. I got to have the steps to do. Oh, I get it, for recovery. Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. And it says, obviously, this isn't good dogma. It's very bad dogma. We talked about that, especially destructive. Uh-oh. We went from instructive to destructive. I get it. He never says one thing without explaining it in detail. Okay. And it says, especially destructive for us, indulgence sort of thing. Skip the next couple, 3 sentences. It says, let us not. It's still page 333. Let us not, therefore, pressure anyone with our individual or collective views. Let us instead accord each other with the respect and love that is due to every human being as he tries to make his life make his way towards the light. Uh-oh. Now, wait a minute, y'all. Is that what we're doing here? One more time. Okay. Let us instead accord each other with the respect and love. I suppose that's what you call real recovery there, okay? That is due to every, not some, not most, not a lot, human being as he tries to make his way towards the light. We know the light is God. Let us always, not sometimes, not a most, time, not a lot, try to be inclusive rather than exclusive. Tradition 3. Let us remember that each alcoholic, didn't say anything else, among us is a member of AA, so as long as he declares, obviously the 3rd tradition. So, we are, and he's going to talk about the next couple sentences about other traditions. We'll be back. In the following sentence at the bottom, it says, as drinkers, we have been more subject to these forms of destruction than most other people. Here, thank God that we do have, and I trust we shall continue, have a tremendous amount of awareness. Oh my God, I thought he was done with this. And our responsibilities for improvement. Next paragraph, our other traditions, we will get back. Let's close with the last 3 paragraphs of 334. It says, let us never fear needed change. Certainly we have to discriminate between changes for the worse and changes for the better. But once a need becomes clearly apparent in an individual, a group, or A as a whole, it has long since found out that we cannot stand still and look the other way. The essence of all growth, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, is the willingness to change for the better, and then an unremitting willingness to shoulder whatever the responsibility. Okay, in conclusion, it is only fair to say that we of AA have been, in most areas of our lives together, make substantial gains in both our willingness and capability for the acceptance and discharge of, damn him, responsibility. Last paragraph. As we look into the future, we clearly see that an ever-grading willingness will certainly be the key to the progress which God intends for us as we move towards his appointed destiny. Oh, I suppose that would be that spiritual entity, because if we're not a spiritual entity, how can we move towards God's appointed destiny? We entertain the idea of some questions. If we want to maybe pass those up, if we have any, we'll try to do that, or we'll try to answer it. I know it's a little bit past time. If we have any, we'll be glad to try to address those. Do we have any questions or concerns? Or if we want to get them up here tonight, if I can get a lot of them, well, maybe we'll do a novel concept in 2 weeks. We'll start with the questions before we start the thing. That way we'll never run out of time and give them the time and consideration that these duly questions are. So if you have any questions, how about if we'll have an Ask It basket? We can pass around. We're going to close up here in a minute. How about if we go this way? If you got any questions or concerns, put them in the basket, and we'll go ahead and do that. And one question I won't answer, we did this before, the first question is, says, why are you such a jerk? So you go talk to your sponsor about that. Talking about me, so we can, that Rule 62, won't take ourselves too serious on that. So see if we have anything. We're not passing the basket again for more money. This is passing the basket for questions, or ideas, no? Any questions or concerns? Okay. If empty basket. Okay, we'll try in 2 weeks. It'll be so. I hope you have a good next Wednesday off wherever your travels want to join you. I would like to close up with 2 things, and they kind of summarize all what we've been talking about, especially since we talked about Toronto in 1965, and then in Toronto 2005, we have what's called our responsibility pledge, and it goes as this. I am responsible when anyone, anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that I am responsible. 1970, the 35th anniversary in Miami Beach, and like I said, this is one of Bill's latest, or one of his last gifts to us, and because he died in that following January of 71. It's called the Declaration of Unity, and it goes as this. This we owe to AA's future, to place our common welfare first, to keep our fellowship united, for on AA unity depends our lives and the lives of those to come. Some of Dr. Bob's last words to us, and it will be appropriate to wrap up with this. AA can be summed up into 2 words, love and service. And he said, we know what love is, and we know what service is. So how about if we do love and service, not only through the 12 steps, but through our 12 traditions? And some of Bill's last words, people always wanted to gush on him and say, Bill, what can I do for you? You just changed my life, yada, yada, and just, really got him. You know what he said? He said these words to everybody that came up to do it then. He said, pass it on. In his last talk to us, one of his last talks, he said these words, and God, I just, like I said, just such insightful. He said, I salute you and thank you for your lives. He was always given the credit on the outside and never assumed or took one personal keynote or anything for this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous and the society that he designed, not only through the 12 steps of recovery, but now we see the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous for our unity, and obviously our 12 concepts for service, a society that he designed, if you will, or God used him for it. And what he said after writing the big book and going through the town's hospital, he said, I was simply a vessel of God, and all these ideas came in to my mind. And he always gave the credit to Almighty God. And certainly that's what these 12 traditions and what we've been doing is to give all, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, all of the credit to Almighty God. And most certainly we learn, if not, and I hate it one last time, the responsibility that he's given us and expects us. And nobody is going to take care of Alcoholics Anonymous if we don't take care of it itself. Mommy and daddy ain't going to do it. Brothers and sisters, unless they're in Alcoholics Anonymous and doing the deal. It's our obligation. It's our responsibility. It's our sacred trust that we do this. Now that we are armed with the hows and the whys and so on and so forth, now that it's so plainly laid out, all we have to do is follow what has been given us, and we will fulfill what God's talking about, how long he's going to keep us around, and then we can all die. And as he said, we can pass it on, pass the torch on, but we want to make sure that the torch is lit, make sure there's enough fuel in it, make sure that the light, if you will, for the still suffering alcoholic is burning brightly. The beacon, there's a group in Akron, Ohio called the Flame Group, and they're talking about the beacon of light. And Bill always talked about the dark cave of the alcoholic. And he talked like the dark night of the soul. Whenever he was talking about the illness, the sickness, the malady of alcoholism, he always used those allegories or those literatures about the darkness, and then obviously God and the sunlight, the spirit and sunlight, and so on and so forth. But it's our obligation to keep the torch going. So see y'all in 2 weeks. If we could close with our Father, our Lord's Prayer.